morning. Less than 50 years ago, it was against the law to practice witchcraft. Indeed, in 1944, a medium called Helen Duncan went to prison for it. The Witchcraft Act was finally repealed in 1951, and today there are growing numbers of people interested in the ancient religion of Wicca and other pagan movements. So, do you believe in witchcraft? That's the question I'll be putting to our panel in a moment. But first, our witness, Kevin Carlyon, who's a white witch. First of all, Kevin, how did you become a witch?
Basically, since the age of 4 or 5 years old, I've had an ability to predict things for people, tell people things that would happen to them, ranging when I was a child from what would be in the sandwiches to other things that happened. I was pulled before a school vicar at the age of 5, who said I had the devil inside me in front of the headmistress. I must stress here my family aren't from any religion at all. My mother went up to school, gave the vicar a complete rollicking for being narrow-minded and basically saying that I had, the devil inside me for being able to predict things.
What's a white witch as opposed to any other kind of witch?
Well, the term witch, I prefer the term practitioner of earth magic, but a witch is, people will say, oh, you mean witch, you can do spells. In the old days it used to be like, they used to believe that we, sacrifice animals, but now all the stuff like Sabrina the Teenage Witch has come out on television. They say that there are goodies. We tap into a good side of a latent energy force, shall we say, very similar to the Star Wars term, which you can actually, through positive thoughts and through incantations, not connecting with spiritual forces, I must add here, but it's power of the mind.
So what you're saying is you're a good witch?
I'm a goodie, yeah.
Who would want to be a witch?
People are born with a sixth sense.
But you're not born a witch.
You are. A witch is born, not created. We'll come to initiation, no doubt, later on. But a person has instincts and abilities and feelings inside themselves. And if the mind is attuned the correct way, you can do nothing but good and beneficial things for other people.
Do you accept, with respect, that people listening to you might think you're completely bonkers?
Of course, yeah. Just like they would believe that of any other religion. But we actually don't go around and say, right, we have this mystic power. We're finding in the 20th century, obviously I'm appearing on this programme now, that witches or pagans, they can be very open now. They can say, okay, I can heal you, we have this ability inside ourselves.
But you can also use it for bad purposes, can't you?
That's
you can put curses on people.
That's the black side.
Have you ever done that?
I have actually not done that, not a curse. But you can...
What have you done that is the worst thing you've ever done?
I think the worst thing I've ever done is annoyed our neighbours, in reality. Because
when you put the doll with...
No. Well, we've done a few bits like that, but that's purely because they said we were playing reggae music 24 hours a day. So we used the Addams Family touch and scared living daylights out of them. Just a bat on our door, and it's what they would expect witches to be like. But in reality, witches nowadays are normal people.
You're a high priest.
I am, yes.
How many people are in your coven?
Throughout Europe and throughout this country, our coven is called the Covenant of Earth Magic, and we are totally separate from other covens, including Wiccan covens, and we have nearly 600 members now.
How did you become the high priest?
Basically through being voted in, and also because I've initiated many other people. Initiation is, in a way, like giving somebody a Barclay card and saying, yes, you can join our group.
Is part of the initiation ceremony still having to have sex with the priest or priestess?
In our group, no, but in some of the Wiccan covens it is. There is nudism, bondage and flagellation involved in some of the Wiccan rites, which I must admit were basically invented in 1951 when the Witchcraft Act was repealed.
Are you happy being a witch?
I'm me. Witch is just a term. I could be called anything. As I say, I prefer the term practitioner of earth magic, but people say, oh, you mean witch? So the title sticks, but yes, it's a way of life. It's a power of the mind, a focal point, not a superstition.
Do you think you're a little deranged?
No.
Okay, Rabbi Shaul Rosenblatt, what do you think? Do you think Kevin's a witch, and if so, is there anything wrong with it?
I don't think I'd call him a witch in the strictest sense of the term. It's more of a clairvoyance type thing, from my understanding of what he's saying. I think witchcraft is slightly different. I think witchcraft is the spiritual forces in the world. The Talmud tells us that every blade of grass has an angel By an angel, I don't mean a winged being pushing it up, but a spiritual force pushing it up. And in the same way as you can take physical forces in this world, you can take the atom, the forces in the atom, and use them in a very powerful way. You can take the spiritual forces that are...
All right, then to ask us another, is there anything wrong with Kevin thinking he's a witch, being a high priest and having a coven of hundreds of people? Is there anything wrong with that?
It depends on to what extent he's involved in witchcraft practices.
Well,
Okay, Kevin.
it's a way of life now, but I must stress here, we're not a loony cult. You know, like the people that beam up to the comet, whatever they were called over in America.
You meet in the dark in a circle and stuff like that?
We meet in woods, we meet in flats. We're very open about the ceremonies we perform. In fact, we've even been called in by police forces around the country in the past to help them with inquiries and things.
And you do cast spells on places, like the local council story about the playground? I mean,
Yes, we do, yeah. We cast spells. It's a power of positive thought to bring about an end result.
But how do you avoid the power of negative thought? Isn't that the danger?
That is the containment within a circle, hence the ritual, hence the robes. I mean, the robes, for instance, they're purely to attune the mind.
Stephen Green, do you think you can control the negative side of witchcraft?
No, I don't. And I think that what you might think to be a positive thing that you're doing for somebody can turn out to be a negative thing that you're doing for somebody else. You can never but the law of unintended consequences.
I must reply to that, because people can go to church and they can pray against their noisy neighbours. So how do you know they're not invoking negative, godly side of things?
Well, noisy neighbours, like you have admitted yourselves, are shortly to be made illegal by the government's new legislation. So
it's a point there, though, that people can pray for whatever they want. They can pray for greed in the Christian term.
Yes, but praying to Almighty God is a quite different, because it's up to Him whether He wants to, how He wants to answer your prayer. And the things that you are doing are deliberately designed to work towards not a political end, a certain end.
Do you believe that Kevin gets his powers from the devil?
I believe he certainly gets his power from the spiritual hierarchies, yes, which I say are fallen angels who are led by the devil.
No, we don't believe in the devil, you see. We believe that devil.
You believe that
evil.
Everything is all and
it's a neutral energy. It's like electricity. You can cook with it or you can kill with it. But we don't pray externally to some false deity, as other religions do. We look internally for our own energies and what we can do, and we have to be the master of our own control and destiny. Whereas people praying to God could be opening themselves to any sorts of evil. I mean, the devil could come to them in the form of God.
Just to bring Prudence Jones in here, sorry, Kevin. You're a pagan historian. Is Kevin a typical witch?
Well, witchcraft tends to be used to describe one of three activities, and one is the kind of spell casting and practical magic that Kevin's been describing so eloquently, and a second is harmful magic only, which I don't hear being talked about much nowadays, certainly around this table. And then the third is a modern pagan religion, usually called Wicca, which uses the spellcasting and clairvoyance techniques to develop the psychic powers, the spiritual powers, in the worship of pagan divinities. So there are three different things,
But isn't the
really.
danger, and Kevin, you've acknowledged it already, that if you have powers like Kevin has, how do you stop them being used for wrong reasons? How do you stop the evil side being used if they do have these powers?
Well,
because Kevin must get annoyed with people. You've got annoyed with your neighbours.
People who recognise those powers, societies that have recognised magical powers, have always legislated against the unauthorised, harmful use of them. All of them. Pagan societies, Christian societies, the lot. Societies that have recognised that those powers work have legislated against them. And it's like any skill, any power, the martial arts. Anybody who joins the UK Martial Arts Federation has to sign a pledge that they will not use the skills they've developed to harm anybody else.
That's a very good
Let the
point.
rabbi... Okay, Stephen, just say it, and then let the rabbi.
Because the Witchcraft Act was repealed, as you said in 1951 in your introduction, by the Fraudulent Mediums Act, and it was the product of a rationalistic age which didn't believe in witchcraft. It only believed that somebody could fraudulently pretend to be a witch or pretend to consult the dead. So that was very much a product of its age. It wasn't trying to be nice to witches, it just didn't believe in witchcraft.
If I can make a point here, that Wiccans and different parts of witchcraft, they believe in life. They don't believe in death. There's certainly no...
So the reincarnationists.
No sacrifices and all that. I mean, we worship in a way, if you want to call it a deity, a sun god, not a son of God. We worship the natural forces of nature around us, but we worship life.
Okay,
You see,
Rabbi.
if I can say, I think the question of whether you can abuse them and whether you can control them, in my mind, that's not the issue. The issue is whether the whole thing's a correct way of looking at the world in the first place. I think that the problem with paganism is it's essentially a self-indulgent way of life. Monotheism...
I will break in to correct that in a moment when
Okay.
Rabbi's finished.
Monotheism looks at what are my responsibilities in the world. What are my responsibilities before the God who gives me responsibilities? Paganism is how can I manipulate the world to make it do the things that I want it to do.
That's not so.
And that's exactly what you're saying.
Historically,
You're manipulating the spiritual forces to get them to get the world to work in the way you want it to
Where
work.
in
But surely prayer power does that as well. And if I can make a point here, if God created man in his own image, then God is a pervert, rapist and mugger, as well as the good side. So where is the...
I suppose that's meant to be a joke, but it's pretty poor one.
It's actually not. No, that's the fact.
The part of man is in God's image. The godly part is in God's image, but he put that godly image into an animal. And we are an animal as well.
Where in the Bible is witchcraft condemned?
It's condemned in Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 11.
Deuteronomy also forbids people to wear garments of wool and linen mixed. It forbids them to plant corn in their fields. So why do people now take out this witchcraft?
That's right. The law forbids incest and it forbids murder.
Okay, let's stick to witches for the
It
moment.
doesn't allow eunuchs to enter the temple of the
If
Lord.
I can make a point here,
Okay.
there would be no such thing as the term witch without the Bible. Christians actually put the fear into modern-day people. They're watching television, they're thinking it's all like Dennis Wheatley. But nowadays, pagans and witches are open enough to come out and say, come and see our rituals.
Would you accept that most people in society think you're weird?
No.
You don't think it's weird to be a witch?
Not at all, and I don't think people do. You'd be amazed who we've been called in the past to actually solve problems for.
I want to jump in now and correct Rabbi about pagan religions. I mean, the pagan outlook on religion is the basic religious outlook of humankind. Monotheisms are a fairly recent development, aberration, some people would say. The pagan attitude to religion is a nature-venerating one, which recognises many divinities, both male and female. And there are the worship of many divinities and many practices, many cults, so-called, many...
The attraction that say one thing of witchcraft
Sorry?
is that women have such a high place in witchcraft compared to paganism compared to other religions.
In paganism generally, there have been women priestesses, and even the Church of England priestesses, they don't call themselves priestesses now, they're women priests, aren't they? And of course there are goddesses in pagan religions, and one of the pagan religions is Wicca, modern witchcraft, which includes the sort of basic spell casting, which people have used all through the ages, with a spiritual component as well.
Prudence, I think you'd still agree that paganism is the manipulation of the spiritual world for it to accomplish my desires.
Usually, it was the pagan Romans who invented the term lex deorum, the law of the gods. The high priests had to interpret the law of the gods and transmit that to earth. Now that's pagan.
Prudence, Rabbi, surely the essence of paganism, here's an alternative, is that it is actually worshipping parts of the created order, rather than worshipping...
That's your distinction between created and creator.
Which is a distinction which isn't made in witchcraft, because you believe that everything is of a whole...
It actually sees nature as a theophany, a manifestation of divinity, of natura naturans.
That's right. Whereas we see God as a creator outside of his creation, but relating to...
Yes, but that's
as
the
an
difference.
evangelical
But then
Christian,
really,
which you are.
that is the force out of control, because you're looking outwardly. We look inwardly, and just to go back to a point earlier...
But that limits you, don't you see? But you
Yes,
look
Christian
inwardly,
mystics look inwardly as well.
and all you have...
Christian
I'm
mystics
not
also
here to
look
defend
inwardly.
Christian
But
mystics.
surely
You're looking inwardly, and
surely
you're
a lot of-
tied down to this world.
Yeah, but a lot of stuff
You can't get any-
in
you
your
can't get out of
Bible, that is occult. It is using
And
paranormal powers. I mean, in this day
You're
and age...
not trying to say that prayer is using occult powers, are you?
Yeah, it's the same as tuning in a ritual.
That's just your opinion, and it doesn't
and
agree
that's your
with the
opinion.
word of
It doesn't agree
God.
with...
But Stephen,
we don't
is
believe
it an
in your God.
indication that ordinary Christian churches, perhaps, are not satisfying a lot of people, which is why so many people are turning to things like witchcraft and
Sure, in these
Wicca?
days, lots of deceptions are going to come. Of course they
It
are.
leads to fragmentation, won't it, of all religions?
It's actually not a deception, it's a reality. It's a reality of a way of life that people are finding.
Yeah.
By tuning into the force of nature, worshipping the earth, if you like. We're here now, whether we come back in other incarnations or whatever, that's the future, but we're here now, and witches and pagans, whatever path, are actually trying to procreate the earth, keep it alive, not pray to a
Right.
deity.
Well, this is
If
the
I-
problem.
if I
If you
can-
set the earth up as a deity above man, then you're going to end up doing some rather unpleasant things
Not
to
at all.
people.
We
Let the
believe
back
that...
in on
The problem
witchcraft.
is that paganism and all that goes with it is essentially amoral. You know, one of the greatest...
What absolute rubbish! You haven't
one-
even seen the
what-
tables of laws which
law
pagan
and morality are very
societies
different.
have.
Law and morality are two completely different things.
Would
you
you
can have
believe-
laws
Yes, and
without
pagan-
morality.
that's right, and
they're
pagan
not
religion
moral
does
laws
not preach
because you do not
morality,
have any
yes.
absolute standards. That's exactly what I said. It is amoral. It might have a system of laws to make society function effectively, but there's no morals, and laws that are not
Morals
underpinned
exist, but
by
they don't
morals.
come from the religion.
You-
Let
you
me
have-
ask the rabbi
you have
something
a s-
specific. Do you think people like Kevin should by law be stopped from what they're doing?
Absolutely. I think it's... Look, I think Kevin is dabbling in it a little bit.
I
think
believe
the
you're
ancients
worshipping a
understood
false
it
god as well.
a lot
He's
better.
hardly dabbling.
But what
I think
about...
the ancients
Let him
were,
just speak.
I think in ancient times people were a lot more in touch with these type of things and understood how to do it better than we do today.
They
What
weren't
should Kevin's
brainwashed into
penalty be?
Christianity.
What should
They weren't
Kevin's
brainwashed
penalty
into
be?
Christianity.
What should Kevin's penalty be? I don't think he's really, in my opinion, I don't think he's really doing witchcraft. I think if he was, I think it would incur the death penalty. I think so. Look, there's a whole question of the death penalty in and of itself.
If I can
And I'll
say,
tell you why.
yeah.
Because I think you look at what paganism has done in the world. You know, paganism has been responsible for more murder than anything else that's ever been before, ever been
Excuse
since.
me, how many things have been done in the name of God? Women have been burned at the
in
stake.
Aztec society, just for an example, Aztec pagan society, according to modest estimates, historians say they murdered 20,000 to 50,000 people a year in human sacrifice.
So
you're
you're
talking about animal sacrifice. That's not what paganism was.
We love
paganism
animals.
was human
Don't get-
sacrifice.
yeah.
And the Romans, for bad human, Romans, to our recorded knowledge, never practiced human sacrifice, except for one aberration, and they actually passed laws against it in case anybody got ideas.
They
that they should
practiced
import it.
infanticide. They practiced
That's not human
infanticide.
sacrifice.
When I talked
It's
about
still not
Witchcraft
great.
Day in
And what
1998.
about Kabbalah anyway? There you are criticising people who are practicing magic within a pagan framework. What about the Jewish Kabbalists?
Right, but
Are
that's
they
a
not
whole
dealing
Judaism
with
which
dark
we're not getting
forces?
into now.
Yeah.
Stephen Green, isn't it true that Christianity stole a lot of the pagan places and a lot of the pagan dates for their own ceremonies?
They have indeed, they have
Christianity
indeed.
stole a lot from paganism.
Well, I don't know about stole a lot. Certainly the festival of Christmas is an aberration. It's celebrating a midwinter festival. We should really celebrate the birth of Christ,
But
around
they-
the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles.
With respect,
but that's...
They
well,
have
hold on
actually
a-
replaced.
Okay, I'll let you
Hold on a
just
minute,
let him
and I'm not happy with calling another festival Easter, which
Easter, the goddess,
goes back
yeah.
to a pagan goddess. But I mean, you turn up in a pagan society in the year 50 or 60 AD, and people are doing these things, and you want to get them off it. So I mean, what do you do? I'm not going to go back and try and second guess those people. What does worry me, and this goes back to the point that the rabbi made, is that every pagan society in the history of the world, in the history of anthropology, has had the priestesses. They've all of them practiced child sacrifice. They've
They
all of them.
haven't. What absolute
Excuse me.
rubbish.
Ours does. Ours practices child sacrifice in the form of
I'm
abortion,
asking-
and every
Do you know,
single one has
if
gone down the
if I
rubbish
can
chute of
say
history.
something without having personal reflect on you. You would
Just
have...
answer, do you practice
The
Of course we
Babylonians
don't.
have
We
gone
don't.
down, the
We don't.
Assyrians
I'm
went.
Kevin
Ancient
Carlyon.
Israel turned to this
I'm not
and went.
talking about the ancient
Judah
past. We're
went.
talking about
Rome
the
went.
20th
Greece went.
century.
Every single
Steve,
one
you
has
are
gone down the
talking
rubbish
a
chute of
load
Steve,
of
let him
rubbish.
and ours will just the same
If I can
around the
finish.
pagan way.
All you would be prepared to do is stamp out witches because you're scared of them, basically, and you'd be very good running a concentration camp.
I'm not scared of...
Totalitarian.
When argument fails, resort to insult, I suppose.
It's not an insult at all, because basically, I would invite you to come and witness one of our rituals. I've been to Christian church. Now, vicars have come along, priests have come along to see our rituals, to see there's no sacrifices, that there's no nudism, bondage, sex, drugs and rock and roll. We're totally against any sort of drug orientation.
Kevin, that there's been a lot of suggestion in relation to some child abuse. That
Of course, but this is
Satanism-
drummed up by the
also
Christian
been
church.
involved.
Would you believe at the moment we're involved in something in Scotland where a priest has come out up there and said he's got a local black magic coven operating there. I actually run the coven in the area. One of them is a solicitor. Now, people involved in modern-day occultism come from all walks of life.
Just
They're
because someone's a
practicing
solicitor doesn't make them pure as a driven snow.
But because someone's a priest. I mean, look at that. I mean, your religion will acknowledge a homosexual priest, but won't allow a woman into the cloth. Whereas
not
ours,
true.
or not now, no, but look at the war that goes on. It's
Don't
like-
worry, I'm not defending
and-
women priestesses. I think
If
that's
I
what
can
we're
say-
doing.
Let the rabbi back in.
If I can say that, I think the difference between Kevin and like ancient cults is that Kevin lives in a time where we live in a society that has been incredibly influenced by 2,000 years of the Judeo-Christian ethic. I think you were brought up on that ethic. I think you were brought up on monotheistic values. Okay, you've moved away from it. But I think you change that society around, and I think the results of it will descend back to what used to be, what the ancients used to be doing 2,000 years ago. It might take 50 years, it might take 100 years, but I think it will be inevitable.
In the name
we will go back to infanticide, human sacrifice, we will go back to all of those things. I don't think it's there now, you're right, because we still have those very strong monotheistic values within our society today.
Because witches are allowed to be open nowadays, they can actually speak out, they can appear on television. In fact, most of the stuff we do is very open, because we say, right, we don't do this. And we're trying to prove a point, basically, because of the mumbo-jumbo that's
Do you work, apart from being a witch
I'm
now?
a printer by trade. I actually do tarot card readings. My wife, Sandy, works at Barclays Bank. This sort of
Are you a
stuff.
full-time witch, basically?
I suppose you could say that, yeah. I'm a full-time witch, not by profession, but by belief system.
What about the time that you apparently drove devil worshippers out of town?
We've actually become involved in all sorts of stuff. If we knew where a witch's black coven was, we would expose them.
But you shouldn't really use those kind of powers, should you?
Not the black side, no. I'm talking about exposing them to the local police. We wouldn't use negative energy against a black magician or anything. We wouldn't use negative energy against a Christian minister.
How did you drive them out?
Basically through positive thought and by exposing the fact that they existed in the local place.
Would you put a spell on them or a curse on them?
Basically a cleansing ceremony, not a curse, no.
A spell?
A spell, which is a positive thought.
And what happened?
They just
How does it work?
They went underground. It's power of the mind.
But isn't that dangerous, Kevin?
Isn't praying dangerous if you don't know who you're talking to?
But most people say you're praying to be good, but you're actually using power to influence other people's minds.
You're using power, and hence why groups of people become involved together as a coven, because there is a prime directive between the people concerned that only justified things can happen. And that is the most important rule that we put into a circle when we cast a circle, if you want to call it that, is that nothing can work unless it's justified.
Do you, Prudence, approve, because of your own research on that, of Kevin's public profile and the very public spells he's been involved in?
Well, Kevin is certainly one of the colourful characters in modern witchcraft, and has brought a lot of attention to witchcraft. As Kevin says, he's practising his particular brand, and there are many other brands of witchcraft. I think he's brought a lot of people to an interest in that, and in pagan religions generally.
But he's been critical of Wicca.
Wicca's being critical of other people as well. I mean, there's a lot of infighting, as there is in any religion.
You could call it bicker and bitchcraft sometimes, couldn't you?
Do you want to stand up, Prudence? Can I ask you one thing, and then I'll bring briefly back in Stephen and Rabbi. The point, though, is that a lot of people listening to Kevin would feel uneasy about it and would think there's something weird, there's something unwholesome, there's something dangerous about witchcraft.
Yes, I think it's the way that it's put. I mean, for example, all kinds of mind-altering techniques are used in new-style management training. I mean, how on earth do you think this television company's run?
Well, they don't cast a spell on us.
Well, what about the latest thing I heard, which was the capillary network? What was it? Nourish your network. If you are a freelance, I don't know, script writer, broadcast, whatever.
They don't have spells on television. We haven't heard about it yet. Anyway,
you don't call it spells. It's called management techniques. This is all the kind of thing that Kevin is putting forward as witchcraft.
I think we're talking about the power of positive thought.
That's right.
And the power of prayer power. We believe in a god and a goddess.
But it's a case of how it's packaged.
I just want to bring the Rabbi in because we're running out of time. Rabbi, is there any problem if, I suppose, Kevin is practising quietly and doesn't disturb other people, or is it dangerous because of the spells and curses they can cast?
No, I don't think the spells and curses are particularly dangerous. As I said, I don't think that we have the understanding, the real understanding of witchcraft as to how to really do the things they used to do in those days. So no, I don't think it's dangerous. I think it's dangerous in as much as if it becomes a religion that more people become involved in. I think down the line, I think you've got to look to the future a little bit here. As I said, I think Kevin is a nice guy because he was brought up in a monotheistic society, not because of his paganism. And I think if we create a pagan society, then we're going to create a very dangerous society to live in.
Do you accept that Kevin is a white witch and therefore is not really very harmful?
No, because I don't make any distinction between a white witch and a black witch. One man's spell is another man's curse, and I think it's fraudulent of him actually to make such a distinction. I don't think it's one that can justifiably be made by the
I think with
practitioners of
respect,
witchcraft.
your not putting a very good case across. Because would you actually come and witness one of our ceremonies?
Certainly not.
Right.
Certainly not. But I'll
come
tell you
to
one thing, there won't be any sorcerers in the kingdom of God, whether they're white or black, so the distinction you're making is completely
To
false.
be honest, I believe your God is dead, and that's all I
Okay,
can
we're
say.
running out of time.
He
I
might
want to ask
contradict-
one
he
very
might well
quick question. I need a
contradict
quick
you one day,
answer.
but-
Do you recommend being a witch to other people?
Yes, I do, because it's a way of tuning
Okay.
yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. See you all again, hopefully soon. That's all from us for this week. We'll be back again next Sunday. Until then, goodbye.